Greetings and welcome to the DISCY Chicks. This is Martha Forlines and Cindy Jacoby, and we have a guest with us today,
Yay.
which I'll be introducing in just a moment. So we are delighted to be ending the year and beginning a new year in 2023 with each and every one of you, and we really appreciate you. So let me introduce our guest. It's Carol Mettenbrink. Carol is with our most favorite assessment company, TTI Success Insights, and is their Director of Product Development. So Carol, welcome to the DISCY Chicks. We're glad to have you with us.
Delighted to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited.
Right. Carol is just a wealth of knowledge. And Carol, if you can just share with us, how long you've been with TTI Success Insights and a little bit about your role. And we are interested in any knowledge that you would like to share with our audience today. And remember, we really are speaking to these leaders of these businesses and owners of businesses so that they understand how these DISC assessments and all of the other assessments that Cindy and I have introduced over the last 3 years can be a real asset to them. So welcome.
Martha, it's a 30-minute show, so I don't think we're going to get all of Carol's knowledge. Maybe
as much as we can.
Right, we'll squeeze it in there. Hi, Carol.
Hi, thank you so much. There is a lot to cover, but I can give you a little bit of background. I actually started out as a juvenile probation officer, believe it or not. So my love for trying to assist people and make sure that they had a better life ahead of them has always been my goal in life.
Right.
So it led down the path. Once I got through that phase of my life, I decided to start coaching and consulting. And I worked with another individual who introduced me to the TTI Success Insights assessments. And I found them to be so transparent, so accurate for individuals. It gave me the ability to really read their assessment results and be able to understand who they were and help me target exactly where I needed to start working with those individuals. So that started about 17 years ago. And I immediately started using not just DISC, but I was also using driving forces. We have another tool that measures individual skill sets in 25 different areas. I also took a certification in what we call the science of axiology, which is even a deeper psychological assessment. And so when you combine all 4 of those, you get to know a person pretty darn well.
I bet.
I've had over the years sitting down and having done thousands of debriefs with individuals around their talent assessments. And they just look at me and they go, who have you been talking to? I know this about me.
Yeah.
And so, when we say these assessments actually give you the ability to reveal a person's human potential, it does. It's always amazing to an individual to see how accurate it does depict them. It gives them the ability to leverage these assessments to help them understand where they should be focused in their professional life, how to communicate, not just professionally, but personally. I've used the assessments from mom and pop shops all the way to the largest corporations in the world. So they really do fit into many different facets of business.
Right, exactly. Well, that's great. That's great. Well, what do you do as the Director of Product Development for TTISI?
As the title would imply, I am working with the products now to improve them.
Okay.
And because I was on the outside of TTI for 10 years in a more application manner. Now I'm on the inside, and I've been on the inside for 7 years. And I am bringing that wealth of information from using them on the outside to the inside. Times you get kind of tunnel vision, I would say, when you creating something, and then you give it to somebody, and then they go out and they start using it. And so I've got the practical application of it as well. So now I'm looking at it and wanting to make a lot of enhancements, making the language more diverse. Our young generation coming up, they use a little bit different language, and so there's going to be a lot of updates in that regard. And then also just graphically, we're just continually upping the game, so to speak, with our. They're pretty thorough as right now, but I know that there's things we can do to improve them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you all do so much for Cindy and I and all the other partners out there in making these improvements. I mean, they're great as they are, but I hear what you're saying about getting language in there that cuts across all the generations. I think that is a real challenge for leaders in the business as it is, but to make sure that the results of these assessments is resonating with them as well as it does with all the people that we've introduced them to. So
just yesterday, I gave my college age son, who's 21, the Trimetrics HD. So that's actually DISC, driving forces, the axiology that Carol was referring to, and the skills that Carol was referring to. So we haven't debriefed it yet, but if he comes across some ideas he doesn't get or concepts, I'll forward those to you, Carol, and see if you can make them a little more cool for the 20-somethings. But you mentioned that you have seen DISC implemented in mom and pops, but also in large corporations. And I would love to hear, stories about both. Like, so I know you've helped many people like us, and you've helped me, work through some certain tougher assessments that before I debrief somebody on a more complicated one. But what would you say to a business owner, or what is your experience, especially in a larger corporation? What do you typically see when they bring in some of these assessments? What's the purpose?
The purpose is to make sure that they've got the right people in the right positions, really utilizing their strengths. As you well know, when something comes naturally to you, it's not work. And we're seeing an issue with engagement. And if you're having to work and struggle in a job that's not well aligned to you, you're not going to stay in that job, or you're not going to produce at the highest level possible. So what we're trying to ensure when I was working in the large corporations is making sure that the people were in the right jobs, that they did understand what their strengths were. I'll give you an example. I was working with a gentleman. We worked with their sales organization at Computer Associates, CA, and we would hold 3-day on-site workshops with them. And the manager of the sales group came up to me and he said, Joe has been with me for 10 years. He's been an outstanding performer. He said, I just elevated his position. And he said, the last 6 months, he's changed. His humor's gone away. His work product's going down. He's had more sick days than I've ever experienced the first 10 years working with him. He said, what the heck? He said, I thought he'd be great for this new job role. And I said, let's look at his profile. Let's try and understand. You show me what your KPIs are, and we'll see what's going on here. And sure enough, he was asking him to do things that just didn't align to his strengths. So the manager said, what can I do? I can't just take away that promotion. And I said, no, but what you can do is you can rewrite the KPIs. You can rewrite the objectives of the job. You can make this job role fit more what his strengths are. And sure enough, we did that. And 6 months later, because they would come back twice a year and work with us, I met the guy again, and he was completely different. He was jovial. He was out there laughing, slapping people on the back, and his work product had gone up. It was just like a total flip of that person, just because we were able to take and look at what are his strengths and put him in a position we knew he could be successful.
Yes.
That's the advantage of using these assessments. I'll have managers go through and I'll do analytics for them based on the raw data,
Mm-hmm.
and especially on those skill sets. And they'll go, and the manager automatically will go, well, no wonder Sarah's struggling, because I'm asking her to do something that she doesn't even have a well-developed skill to do.
Right.
And so in those situations with large corporations, it's just taking the time to say, who do we have? What are their skill sets? Where do we need to develop them further so that they can be successful personally and for the organization?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that is the plus of using these assessments. Don't use them just for, a fun thing to do to try and build morale in the group, but use it as a managerial tool. Use it to say, what do we have today? What do we need in order to hit our objectives for the year? What do we need from a strategic perspective, 3 to 5 years out?
Mm-hmm.
So they can start to develop every individual. Because I'm here to tell you, this new workforce, they want to be developed. They want to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go in and you provide them with this type of information, and they see the trajectory of their career within your organization and how you're going to help them get there, they're going to stay.
Yeah.
So
and it's a scientific way, not an arbitrary way. So Carol, what is your DISC style? I think just based on what you just said, I'm pretty sure I know that, but will you share with our audience your DISC style?
Yes, I'm about 55D, which is dominance. So when it comes to problems and challenges, I'm pretty moderate.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to influencing people, I'm fairly low. I'm a 6.
Oh
So,
gosh.
yeah, and I work with people day in.
Welcome to the chaos of the DISCY Chicks, because we're 98 and 100, I believe. So
people go, how do you do what you do?
Yeah.
And I said, even though I may have a very low I, doesn't mean that I can't interact, that I can't stretch. I can't put energy into that in order to be successful. My S is around an 80, and my C, which is all about compliance and analytics, is a 94.
Wow. Oh my. So
Yes.
that's
when
your
you mentioned
primary.
showing the data to make decisions, that's what tipped it off for me. And I think that's probably something I know I don't do enough of. I imagine, Martha, since we're the same person, that you might not use the data part of that as much as we probably could.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But think about some of the most successful athletic teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting analytics into the decisions.
Everything.
And it's saying, yeah, they're running and how much weight do they lift and so on and so forth. But if you're not evaluating your talent, you are losing out on not just for that individual's success, but for the organization's overall success. You've got to put the right people in the right jobs.
Right.
It doesn't mean if Joe over here and we've assessed him and we go, oh, he doesn't, align well to his job role, doesn't mean you need to eliminate him. It just means maybe he'll fit better in marketing. Maybe he'll fit over in sales.
Right.
We've got them in the wrong position. So you can redeploy them. But it's just looking and evaluating and saying, where are the strengths of an individual? I'm not going to force somebody to do something if it's one, not their natural talent, and two, they have no interest in it.
Right.
If it's a paycheck, they're probably not going to work as hard as the person who has a passion for that particular job.
Well, Carol, I think about all of the workforce challenges that small businesses and large businesses are faced with now. And, the number one, and you referenced using it in selection, even though it may have been an internal opportunity for that young person. But in this case, they're having trouble finding people, to hire. And then they're really taking shortcuts on the hiring process. Is it the mirror test? And they're hiring people because they're so desperate. And Cindy and I have talked about job benchmarking and the value of these assessments in selection, but some people are so desperate, they're skipping all of that. And then they get them in the job and wonder why they're failing, or, they're not doing a good job. So I'm sure you've been seeing some of this with some of your other larger clients, not just the smaller ones. But what are you all telling these business owners and business executives to do, facing what they're facing today and will be facing in 2023?
Well, one thing that we've seen is the trend will be hiring is going to start to trend down a bit, but it doesn't mean that you still shouldn't go after good talent. That's been an issue. That the thing that I would still strongly recommend is that you benchmark the job role. What is it that's going to work in your culture in that specific job role, so that you know what attributes that you would like to have.
Right.
Doesn't mean you're going to find it. Okay. But the thing of it is now you have something to measure against. So once you create that benchmark and you know the attributes that you need in this particular job role, you still go out and assess the talent that you can pull in. And then you compare it to that benchmark. Now what you have is you have a starting point of understanding where that candidate didn't match. And if you hire them, now you have a personal development plan, because you know that person didn't come in with those strengths. You're not going to always find a perfect apples to apples. And the talent pool is so limited right now. But what this gives you is an opportunity to understand where you need to start developing that talent, even though they might not have brought all the tools to, into the job that you want.
Right.
All of the attributes in our assessments can be developed.
I always share that with the new hire. It's like, here's the job benchmark. This is what we're looking for. This is why we chose you, because it matches this, but these are still important. And then it really helps them understand, okay, they're serious about this and they want this, and I might need to start putting some effort into that, because we know we're not going to match everybody up, 100% of the time. And I have one other point. I worked with a company who had a position with high turnover, and I did a job benchmark on the position, and, put everything into the magic computer, and it spit out, this is a terrible job. Nobody's going to want to do it. And I'm using my own words with this, but it just says you are asking people to sell and then ship, support, sales and support, all in the same role. Very complicated shipping going on. And so, the solution was to create two different jobs. It was a big enough organization that you could have the sales group and you could have and some people are so relieved to not have to talk to other people.
I bet.
And then the other people say, oh my God, I don't have to calculate shipping to Zimbabwe. And it was great. But I don't think we've talked enough about that. You can enter all this data, and sometimes you get some feedback from the assessment saying it's going to be it says it's not impossible, but it just said it's going to be very difficult to find somebody who will be successful in this job. And so I thought that was great feedback. And I don't think we talk about that enough either. Well,
this solution is broader than just one job role. Like to your point, Cindy, yesterday I was working with a gentleman, and they have a CEO, and we had assessed him months ago because he was a bit of a problem. He's not a people person. And so the gentleman came back to me yesterday and said, could you talk to me a little bit more? And we need to find a solution, because the executive committee's trying to determine whether to keep him or to let him go. And so my questions to him were, is this gentleman causing an attrition issue. And he said, no, people are actually still working for him. They're not quitting. And I said, is he causing any financial deficit for you? Is there any other red flags going up around him? Well, no, not really. And I said, well, then here's a different way to look at this. Keep him in his position, but put somebody between him and the people. So bring on a chief of staff, and I will help you hire a person that will be able to manage him and be able to communicate with the people, which you don't have right now.
Yeah.
And he just went, whoa, I think we can make that work. So, and because the gentleman can do a great job, he's more of a CFO than he is a CEO, but we just need to bring in it, Cindy, as you said, that person, in between him and the rest of the people where they were having the challenges.
Serve as a buffer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So a lot of different ways to utilize the tools to evaluate. We know that, you can use the emotional intelligence, the EQ, to determine, because if you've got low EQ, you're not going to be probably making very good decisions. If you're not able to manage your emotions, allow your emotions to drive those decisions. And as raised kids, we all know, sharp buttons, and
they can.
Yeah. And then you go, oh, that probably wasn't a good way to handle that.
But at least they're in their room with the door closed now, and I can have my glass of wine. But next time I'll do it differently.
Exactly. But, in the moment, we know that the EQ is going to be very important, especially in that leadership level. And even this gentleman did not have it, the CEO that I was referring to. And so we can continue to work with him in those particular areas, but bring someone else in to do some, damage control and be better with the people. So,
Carol, can you share a team building example that you've had in your role there at TTISI, and what problems did it solve for a leader? Because I think this is another great opportunity for leaders to really apply the wisdom of assessments. But I'd love to hear an example.
Well, that's kind of my baby. So I team building, and the report has a lot of my input in it. But a couple of things, the way that I utilize it, I can use it from a very analytical perspective, and then I can use it from just going in and using it for communication effectiveness. So using it from a team building, just people getting to understand how to communicate, why they're having those scratchy areas, why Susie over there drives me crazy, and why everybody is intimidated by Joe. So it's just being able to use the tools to identify what everybody's communication styles are, and how to work more effectively with one another. It also allows a manager to determine, especially based upon their driving forces, what types of projects should you be assigning individuals. From a knowledge base, one of the values is intellectual and the other one's instinctive. Well, if I've got a project that's going to be long-term, that's going to, has kind of a long line for the outcome, I'm going to put somebody who's high intellectual on that, because they'll want to go in and get all the research data and learn anything and everything about it before they start on that project. And instinctive, not so much. Just give them
that sounded terrible, that job. So
so, as a manager, I want to know who's going to be the quick start, and I want to know who's going to go, broad and deep in those particular situations. Somebody who's resourceful, somebody who's going to net things out, who's going to be effective and maximize their time and their talent, versus somebody who wants to not worry about all of that. They want to just get the job done really well. So it's being able to dive deep into seeing what your talent is composed of, and then how to best utilize it.
I have a driving forces question for you. I feel like driving forces kind of sets the culture of the company. How do you weigh that, the collective driving forces, a startup, you were looking for innovators and things like that, versus the individual person who it may fit their role really well? That's a question I always have difficulty answering. Are you trying to fit the broader culture or the job's driving force?
You pretty much it's a little bit of both. I think you have to be aware of what the company's mission statement is. I always,
Mhm.
if you want to understand the culture of and what the driving forces are of an organization, a company, go read their mission statement.
Mhm.
You can apply those values to it.
Mhm.
As far as an individual, when they're looking at companies to go and interview with and decide whether or not they want to work for them, I always say you've got to go and do your homework. Is that the culture you believe you're going to excel in?
Right.
Job role is going to reward you one way. The culture is probably going to have some influence, but the
Okay.
job, really, you need to have more targeted towards
Okay.
because you're in that day in and day out.
Right.
Mhm.
And if you're not being rewarded, you're not going to be fulfilled. And you're going to lose that mojo sooner or later because you're adverse. If you're working in a culture that's adverse to your values, then you're definitely eventually probably going to leave. Even
So the
if
answer is both.
even if you love the job.
Yeah.
Sometimes
No,
you just stomach some of the decisions that are being made.
I think
Yeah.
that's a great way of explaining it. I think you're right. The mission statement is a great way to start. I just conducted one and it was so much like the CEO. He was very high intellectual. It's like, we love, and it's a restaurant. And he's like, we love to learn. And I was like, okay, and they want to know all about their product and all this stuff. So it definitely shows, it can't hide that. If they really truly develop a mission statement that's reflective of that group, then it's definitely going to show up there.
Yeah.
Well, there's a dental corporation, and they put their mission statement up in their lobby, and it's all about charity and giving. And if you're somebody who doesn't have that same belief, you're not going to be as engaged because they do a lot of fundraisers
Outreach and yeah.
events, and you might feel like you're a little bit of an outlier if you don't align to that value.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
so it is both, Cindy, to your point.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
accept that response.
Well, excellent. Do you have any other examples that you would like to share with our listening audience today that you just see it makes such a huge difference for people's businesses that we just haven't talked about yet?
I have lots of examples. I'll give you one. I was working with one of the largest land developers in the country, and I had their community events group together, and we were going through their behaviors and their driving forces, and it was a group of about 30. And so it was a great big U shape. The tables were up, and I'm standing in the middle, and I've just finished the overview of their drivers and behaviors. And I was getting ready to give kind of a segue and take a break, and the manager interrupted me, and he said, "Carol, stop." And I went, "Oh, what did I do?" No. And he goes, "No, no." And he leaned forward in his chair and he looked down the table to one of his newer employees, and he said, "Margaret," he said, "I owe you an apology." And the room got so quiet, you could hear a pin drop because everybody was just in anticipation going, this was not like the manager, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
He didn't make public apologies. And he said, from what I've just seen here, I have just understood that I have been mismanaging you for the last 6 months.
Mm.
I have been managing you what I expect from you, not from who you are, and really looking at your strengths and then readjusting the way that I manage to those.
Mhm.
He said, I apologize. I realize I've been probably stifling you and
Wow.
making you comfortable. And she was just, jaw dropped, but so appreciative. And then months later, when I circled back, sure enough, that relationship had just evolved, and
Yeah.
she was feeling a lot more comfortable and more accepted.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't managing her the way he thought she should.
Yeah.
Did you just drop the mic and walk out of the room?
It was one of those moments. You just
Right?
went, wow,
Well, and what a great example if the CEO publicly apologizes and if he is capable of mismanaging employees and he's the boss, then what a great example to all the other managers and and all the people, that interact with each other, taking that information they have about each other now into consideration before they start their job or relationship or whatever that is.
Well,
Awesome.
another example is when you take that data and you see, I was working with a large mechanical company down south. They're a good old boy group. They've been around for years and years. And we did a diagnosis of all of their salespeople. And so, everybody thinks salespeople are just, A driven, they're DIs. And
Yep.
so there must have been about 150 of them. So I culled down all this information on their disc and their driving forces. And I ended up honing in on who their rock star was. And so when I went back to the managers and I said, so who do you think your rock star is and what their profile looks like? And they go, oh, it's got to be a DI and resourceful and this and that. And I said, so would you like to see? And so I showed them, and it was an SC. It was a coordinator.
Wow.
But here's the deal. Doesn't mean the different styles can't sell, but what he was driven through intentional, commanding, resourceful. I think the other one was objective. So he had very strong values that really align well to being a good salesperson. It's not just your behavioral style, it's behavioral style to sell.
Yeah.
And it depends on what is it you're selling. Is it a short cycle sell or is it a long cycle sell?
Right.
So these tools can give people that moment of aha, and even showing them based upon their knowledge of a sales cycle with that group, we determined if they just moved the needle in one area, they weren't good at closing. If we just moved it by 1%, that added dollars to the bottom line.
Sure.
Just like,
Sure.
this is awesome. We had no idea where we were falling down in the sales cycle. And now that we can focus on that, develop that further, and make a huge impact to that bottom line.
Right. Right. So there you have it, folks.
This is
from
great.
Carol Mettenbrink. I mean, it is amazing to me that these smart people are doing things kind of unconsciously when they're hiring a profile that may not be the optimal profile for a sales job, just as an example. But when they see the data or you deliver that data to them, they get it so quickly and go, I could have had a VA, right? Yeah. When they realize what they had been doing. And oftentimes my experience is they're hiring in their own likeness. And, that's a disaster in itself. So, but this has been great. We really appreciate you sharing those examples and all the other information that you've shared, Carol, because they do make a huge difference and can make life much easier and more profitable for their businesses.
Absolutely.
And I want to remind everybody, if you want to take a free DISC assessment or DISC and driving forces, just go to DISCYchicks.com. You'll be able to navigate the website and find that. All of our podcasts, our lists of episodes are also found on DISCYchicks.com. We have audio, we have Facebook, and now this year we have YouTube. So there's lots of ways if you want to walk and listen, or if you want to sit and scroll through them, we'll be there. But Carol, I agree with Martha. Thank you. This is super helpful. I learned, as I always do, from our guest a lot, and wish you the best in 2023 and beyond.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks.